Hi, it's me, Carol Salter, reading from my book Witch on the Warpath, and today we're on Chapter 3, Hope's Plea. You can follow along if you have a copy of the book. It's really useful if you're learning to read or trying to pick something up from it. So let's see how we go today. "Where is she? Where is she?" wailed Hope, her voice becoming higher in pitch as she flew in a zigzag pattern back and forth in an effort to locate the lost infant. "She can't have vanished. It's impossible. She can't have been taken. I did the enchantment correctly. I know I did. I've completed it many times. Where can she be?" What surprised Hope most was not only had the babe vanished, but the lamppost and 3 blocks of housing surrounded it had vanished too. Every building had gone. All that remained was a gigantic flat square of brown soil and a huge pile of orange house bricks in one corner of the empty plot. "Where has everything gone?" asked Hope, raising her eyes to the heaven as she circled the area from high overhead. "The lamppost, the houses. What foul mishap has occurred here?" At this point, you might think it neglectful of the watcher, Hope, abandoning an unborn infant alone at the foot of a decrepit lamppost where any passer-by or stray dog could find her. However, this was standard operating procedure for enchantments. It is duly recorded in the Book of Realm Lore as follows. "Once an enchantment is cast, said infant cannot be removed from the vicinity until such time as the conditions of the enchantment is fulfilled. The watcher maintains full responsibility of said fairy babe. Apart from the expected parents, the infant's watcher is the only fairy who can lift the enchantment, with one exception: the express order of the Fairy King." SOP Section 7, Subsection 5, Paragraph 4, Watcher's Rulebook. "Maybe I should have taken her over to the orphanage," Hope mumbled. "But enchantments are so much more romantic and lovely for my little ones. If I hadn't grown up in that nasty, disgusting orphanage, just the mention or even the thought of that wicked place made her heart pound and her wings tremble. I don't care," she announced to a passing mole. "I'd never inflict that on any of my wards." The mole whiffled his pink nose as if in agreement. Hope, noticing she had an audience, turned to the furry creature. "I've watched over my babies as though they're my own children. I've checked my enchantments twice a week, as laid down in the rules, sometimes more." The mole nodded. Well, he thought it was expected of him. What Hope said was true, but her 2 recent uncollected cocoons lay in far safer, more discreet places, such as under a gooseberry bush at the bottom of somebody's garden, and in a robin's redundant nest. If the babe's parents arrived, they would have left their mark for me to log with the registry office. Hope twirled round the space, searching for the mark. There was none. The mark was equivalent to a signature for fairy races. Hope, like many magical species, couldn't decipher human writing. If she had, she might have deciphered the luminous yellow sign secured to the doomed lamppost, instead of twirling around on the top of it. Hope's failure to read was not uncommon. Elves and gnomes thought it beneath them. Pixies and goblins couldn't read their own writing, let alone human literature. Orcs, ogres and trolls didn't possess written words, relying instead on oral history and long memories. The notice had announced the imminent demolition of the entire neighbourhood in preparation for a new highway. The humans, in their infinite wisdom, had decided it was time to build another of their very big roads. They were always seemingly building them, roads going nowhere. The precise moment any new road was open, it filled with traffic, as though the vehicles were poised waiting in the bushes. One popular theory was that humans waited for new roads to be opened in order to purchase their first car. Whatever the reason, regardless how many roads the humans built, all of them ended up carrying the same amount of traffic. Wringing her hands and breathing great wheezy asthmatic breaths, Hope flew back to her local office, her mind in complete disarray. Dipping and diving, she missed objects in her path by micrometers as she failed to concentrate on her flight path. Turning left into Church Street, she flew straight up the exhaust pipe of a parked transit van. Luckily, it had been parked a while and was cold inside. "What a stupid place to park a vehicle," she grumbled, emerging covered in sooty black dust. Coughing, squinting, her eyes black as a bat, Hope continued on her way. Tears washed into 2 tram lines down her blackened face as she reported her first ever infant loss to the yawning supervisor on duty. "You don't understand," she squealed, mortified at her supervisor's bored expression and laid-back couldn't-care-less attitude. Grabbing his crossed feet, she yanked them off the top of his desk. "She has no one to care for her. How you know how precious every fairy life is, how holy and sacred." Hope stood in front of her supervisor, wringing her tiny hands red raw. "Who knows what awful things the kidnapper is doing to her? They could be tearing her wings off as we speak." In reality, Hope was the only one speaking. The hideous image appearing inside her head made her tremble. She began her tirade anew. "Listen to me, please," she begged. "This babe isn't even adopted," she bellowed into her supervisor's bland pastry face. Her plea for help didn't make much of an impression on him. He'd seen it all in his long life. He flashed an insipid, silly smile, his eyebrows rising into his hairline as he replied, "Ah, well, you can't save them all, girl. Put it down to experience." Hope watched as his eyebrows dropped and joined together in a single hairy line above his nose, his voice rising into a higher, patronising tone. "Off you go. I'm sure there's lots of other babes out there needing your attention." Waving his hand, he dismissed Hope's problem in an instant, turning his mind and his monobrow to more important things, such as the monthly rota. Taking a deep breath, Hope raised her game. Desperate for her supervisor to listen to her before this baby was lost forever. "I'm a watcher!" she hollered into his left pointy ear. Cranking her internal distress up a level, she opened the valve to full-blown fairy hysterics. She wailed and fretted and wailed, stamped her tiny feet around the room, hands on hips, demanding someone do something in head office. "I've taken a sacred vow," she screamed at the top of her tiny lungs. "I swore a solemn oath," she screeched, causing the glass in the window behind her supervisor's desk to shatter at the pitch. He ducked. Picking up a chair, Hope slammed it down onto the desk to emphasise her point, just in case he missed the window breaking. "It's my duty to keep all in my care free from harm," she yelled, punctuating each segment of her sentence with a deep and wheezy breath. Her wings agitated so fast behind her, the official's important papers fluttered round the room. Sensing a disaster looming, her supervisor made a frantic grab for the duty rotors just as several went scooting out of the broken window 3 floors up. "And I've failed," she howled, treating the impromptu audience crowded around the supervisor's door to a wonderful finale performance, including a loud wet sob. Hope followed it with a scrumptious encore as she collapsed, panting onto the carpet, her body flopping like a floppy jelly in an appealing maiden swoon. Her stunned audience stood, mouths agape, unsure whether to gasp or applaud Hope's dramatic display of theatrics. Her outburst caused quite a commotion throughout the building. More folk, attracted by the paper tumbling past their windows, came up from downstairs to check whether orcs had invaded. Her supervisor stood biting his fingernails in the far corner of his dishevelled room, while spontaneous paper aeroplanes glided in and out. He raised his one black eyebrow as his line manager's features appeared in the doorway. "Problem?" asked the white-haired elder tree-elf, his pointy teeth smiling like a shark on the prowl. As a result of Hope's very public outburst, the manager asked her supervisor to call an initial strategy meeting. The outcome involved the entire northwest wing of the London Watchers Department and their admin staff searching the whole area twice. Meanwhile, the office cleaner, Mabel, a kindly slime waif, sat Hope down in an undamaged chair and brewed a strong cup of acorn tea, a well-known pick-me-up and powerful remedy for the dreaded iced blood syndrome, IBS. "You'd better be careful of your wings, dearie. I was afeard they might be ice damaged. Drink your tea up, sweetheart." Mabel patted her on the back and trundled away. Hope, her mind numb and her voice hoarse from all the shouting, sipped her hot tea and waited for the search teams to return. The manager had banned Hope from the search, quoting employment regulations at her. After several hours, everyone returned, tired and empty-handed. The supervisor tutted sympathetically to Hope, then hugged her and suggested she might find a short leave of absence restful. The risk assessment manager upstairs concluded that, due to the extent of devastation, the enchantment had in all likelihood failed. He surmised the most probable cause was an ogre devouring the infant as a tasty snack while out on a mating rampage. The watching department provided insurance against such an event, so should the infant's parents turn up at a later date to claim her, they would be recompensated. Some of the staff suspected the parents of the baby had been eaten too, but they daren't mention this to Hope. Hope felt ashamed and incompetent at the loss of her babe. She tried submitting her notice to her employer. Her supervisor refused to accept her resignation, his eyebrow rising to new heights at such a suggestion. His manager had taken him to one side after Hope's outburst and advised him to appear more compassionate and understanding towards his staff. He was doing his best to show his new, caring side of his character. "You're too worthy a watcher, Hope. We can ill afford to lose someone as dedicated and passionate as you." He glanced at the newly installed pane of glass. "Devoted watchers are hard to find. Go on holiday somewhere. Give yourself a break. Time to heal. And when you feel better, come back to us. Hope went home distraught at her imposed vacation. She paced up and down the main branch outside her home, mumbling to herself. The next morning she found clumps of hair between her fingers. She'd pulled it out in her sleep, something she hadn't done since her time in the orphanage. She had to take action. She crouched down on the branch and hugged her knees. I know the enchantment was the correct thing to do. In my heart, I know that baby is safe somewhere. In desperation, she sought support from amongst her friends and fellow co-workers. I still think it's bizarre the ogre's mating rampage didn't appear on the fairy news forecast. We always get a warning when they're due, she insisted to her colleagues when they met for lunch the following day. There must be another reason for the infant's disappearance. Her friends nodded, smiling at her. They'd heard her theory 100 times over the last 24 hours. As Hope continued to grieve for her lost babe, a kindly friend and fellow watcher, feeling sorry for her, suggested they take a glass or two of bilberry wine in a nearby tavern, the George. While Hope and her friends sat supping wine, the infant in question was still very much alive. She slept on in her pink sphere, oblivious to the outside world due to Hope's enchantment, which was fortunate considering what happened after Hope left. Her wings would have frozen with IBS without a shadow of a doubt if she'd watched the scene which followed the conception. It was an event nobody knew about or could even have prevented. Of course they found out about it later, years later, to their peril. If Hope had lingered a little longer the night she placed the enchantment upon the fairy girl, she would have witnessed a rare event, the birth of a second infant, a twin. She would have been watching when a blue cocoon appeared containing a beautiful baby boy. Where the first baby was fair-haired, he was dark. Where her smile was soft and gentle, his tight lips held no smile, his tiny fists clenched and unclenched as if in pain. Because of his late arrival, he wasn't included in Hope's enchantment. He received no watcher's protection to keep him safe. Later that same night, the air around the lamppost became warm, then scorching hot. The grass withered under the intense heat. The lamppost glowed red and bent down like a tired and thirsty tulip. A sound, like souls being shredded across a cheese grater, came from somewhere. From a tiny speck of nothingness, a black hole appeared in the air. Smaller than a seed, darker than the night sky, the size of a pinhead. From outside Earth's dimension, the tip of one filthy grey claw poked through the pinhole. It agitated and niggled like someone scratching a dirty mark off the kitchen table. Beyond, something sniggered. The hole became a tear. The tear became a rip. The rip lengthened to 4 jagged inches. A slit existed, and behind it greasy blackness. A filthy red arm snaked through. A gnarly hand grasped about, pulling up handfuls of burnt grass, till a tiny pink cocoon rolled towards it. The thing on the other side snatched up the cocoon, then hissed as its hand burnt. Spitting and swearing, it threw the cocoon back onto the wilted grass. The hand withdrew. Mewling and licking noises issued from beyond the slit, which gaped even wider. A pair of evil red eyes glared hatefully at the world of light. Seeing the unprotected blue cocoon, the creature's hand swooped, seized it. A crooning noise could be heard as the blue speck disappeared, and the thing sealed the tear with spittle from its purple mouth. The creature raced away from the crime scene, taking the newborn innocent deep into the Neath realms. The young Neath demon, for that is what it was, didn't know what it had stolen. It couldn't know this single act of thievery would begin a chain of events, changing the future, and resulting in the convergence of the dimensions. Dimensions which till this fateful night had existed separate and invisible from human eyes for centuries. Before the Rift War, magical species roamed free across the 6 major dimensions and 6 minor ones, including Earth. For 1700 years since, magic had been resigned to children's storybooks, the subject of legend and folk tales. That was all about to change, thanks to the demon's theft. It would have been horrified if it had known. If its master had found out, it would have ripped the demon's arms and legs from its body and cast it into the pit of endless suffering. For the theft sealed not only Earth's fate, but the fate of all the magical dimensions. I hope you've enjoyed today's reading, and I look forward to sharing more with you for Chapter 4.